Hey guys, so it's been a while. I kind of went to ground once I left my school and the YouTube channel, but I've been thinking, in the interim, just based on my own experience of kind of navigating through in a way from ESL in Japan, that it might be of benefit to kind of share my experiences and accumulated wisdom on that. Now that I'm kind of established and out of that scene. So this is the first video, and hopefully what'll be a series of showing different ideas and ways to kind of build up the skills and also probably equally importantly the network to move out of teaching English full time and into working in IT full time, which is really what I recommend. There's a couple reasons for that. And the first is that IT in the present age is not nearly as regulated as other industries. For example, if you wanted to become a doctor or a lawyer in Japan, well, first off, after a certain age, it would pretty much be impossible because because of the way Japanese society works. There's a lot of weird barriers to entry, but um, Japan currently is still suffering from a kind of deficit of strong IT talent compared to the U.S. and the West in general. From what I can tell, they didn't really jump on the bandwagon of internet business and kind of online life quite as much as the U.S. did, and then also in turn Europe. So they're slightly behind, to say the least. Some people will estimate as much as 10 years, but I think even in my own time in the industry, I've noticed really strong efforts to catch up. But anyways, the fact remains that IT is currently open to you regardless of the majority of your background, your age, your nationality, etc. So it's a great industry to get into because of that, and also it's a global industry, which is something we often overlook. I remember coming over here back in 2007 and kind of just resigning myself to being in this isolated, world where the culture and the language and the people were just completely different, and kind of just essentially saying goodbye to any professional opportunities in my own home, which was really a dumb way to think about it. But I mean, based on what was available to me, I didn't really see an alternative. You come into this medium-sized city on the other side of the ocean. All you're really qualified to do is teach English, and so, as you know from my previous videos, I dove in and invested in that pretty heavily. I would say I went as far as you can go in terms of being an ESL professional in Japan. And I never really cared for it, to be honest. It was always kind of just a way to make a living, and that's not unique to Japan. I think a lot of us end up doing that. It's not kind of, it ends up being more like we end up doing what we can, not what we want. And thankfully, most of us are as human beings, we're really, really adaptable. You can kind of get used to what really is a subpar position and start to see the fun in it and enjoy things and get used to it, and start putting sincere effort into it, which is good. That's a nice facet of being human. Otherwise, it would really, really suck. But I just want to make it clear that you don't have to stay on that path if you don't want to. And there are a lot of opportunities out there. And as one who followed that path and made effort to break into the industry and succeeded, I think I might be able to offer some value to people and some suggestions, and maybe even something kind of approaching guidance in that regard. So If you are out there and you're wondering, how in the world do I go from ESL guy or girl to making a living as an IT professional, I think the very first step would be to decide what exactly in IT you want to do, right? So a lot of people will go kind of the path of the coder, which is probably the most accessible and well known. And it is, I would say, a good start because regardless of what you're doing in IT, having a solid technical background will always help. Like, you'd be surprised how many people will just kind of lock up when it comes to dealing with anything remotely technical. And I'm not talking about, like building Facebook from scratch. It can be simple things like some people struggle with, using Microsoft products. I mean, so if you go into that, hardcore, really deep dive technical journey where you learn how web and mobile applications work and how to build them and add features and debug, um, even if you don't end up working professionally as a programmer, you will be building some extremely valuable skills, not just in terms of, you know, work, but in life in general. It helps the way you think, the way you kind of manage your cognitive and temporal resources. So definitely it's a good way to go, but I can speak from experience that programming is not for everybody, even if you can kind of, pull yourself through a course. The daily grind of being a programmer is not something that will bring satisfaction to everyone. It's not very social. Um, there's a lot of kind of repetitive, just get this done by X, fix this, fix that. We want to see this feature, build something that does that. And if you're the kind that likes to tinker and spend a lot of time on things and kind of whittle away until you get things working, it's perfect. But not everybody's like that. Thankfully, there are a lot of positions in IT that are not programming. And again, even if you do want to go to a coding boot camp, that can still help you. And also, as a teacher, you have a lot of skills, a lot of soft skills that are very difficult to teach. I noticed myself, when I started teaching English originally, um, I'm a pretty introverted guy. Like I majored in acting. I have no problem with public speaking or performing or moving in front of big groups of people. But when it comes to just my general personality, I'm a pretty introverted person. It used to be I was not really great at starting or keeping conversations. Um, I was not very good at controlling my body language around people I didn't know. If I was like stuck in a room with someone, I would just kind of be like, what do I do? Way too nervous and kind of self-conscious. And I really believe that just the years of working with, really thousands of students of all different backgrounds and ages and experiences really kind of like tempered me into a person that can pretty much talk to anybody, kind of manage groups of people, be an effective communicator, able to kind of read another's level of understanding or engagement and kind of adjust on that. And these are things, you kind of develop under fire in ESL. So even if you do feel like, oh man, this is not a satisfying career path, I would definitely rest assured that if you've been teaching, quote, successfully for a while, to the point where you're able to control a group of like 10 4-year-olds, or you can keep, two elderly women engaged for their hourly English class. Those are actually really valuable skills, and those are things that a lot of people in the world really really struggle with. Like, it's hard to deal with people. So if you can already do that, there is a lot open to you in IT, definitely, and in life in general. But also we have to remember, like, okay, you're living in Japan, and if you've been here for any length of time, the society is really different. Companies are very kind of siloed. Like you enter at the ground floor at a certain age and kind of work your way up. And because of that, there are not as many opportunities open to us expats as there would be if we were in our home country. And honestly, a lot of the opportunities that you would have to kind of bend over backwards for here in Japan, to me, from where I'm sitting, based on my experience, really aren't worth it. I really don't have a desire to climb the corporate ladder in Japan or try to get into a company and work my way up. There's a lot of reasons for that. Partly it's my personality, despite being I would say quiet, not introspective to a fault, but definitely more on the reflective side. I do not mesh well with Japanese corporate culture. There's a lot of protocol and just BS, I would say, that I know from experience I would just rather avoid. So because IT in Japan is still kind of developing field, and because there is a deficit in terms of local talent, there are opportunities open to you that would not be otherwise. So it's important to remember that you do have skills that are valuable, and a lot of them, in terms of soft skills, they are way more difficult to impart to someone than hard skills. Anyone who's been around in business will tell you that. And really smart companies, they hire attitude. They hire people based on their character and what they see and how they interact and how they communicate. Hard skills are, they're very objective and logical, and some people are definitely better at them than others, but they are a lot easier to teach in the sense of this is what you do, this is what you don't do, than soft skills, because soft skills they're just kind of ineffable. Some people have them and some people don't, and for those that don't, it's where do you start, so personally I think kind of being thrown into the mix teaching English, it has a way of making you a master of communication and a master of reading people, and that is so valuable if you want someone who can effectively deal with clients. They're able to kind of navigate based on the situation. So the goal from here on out with this channel is to help people find resources and information to help them make the transition from teaching English to working in IT in Japan. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, please leave a comment or your questions below. I'd be happy to talk about my own experience. I'd be happy to talk about your experience, what I'd recommend you try, some steps to get started. And really the most important part is getting started. Results always take time. And when it comes to entering a new field, with the exception of being an English teacher in Japan, which you can pretty much start within a couple of days of getting here, it takes time. You have to build up the skills. You have to build up a record of the skills, a portfolio, your GitHub, your AWS account, whatever it is. And then you have to start looking for opportunities. But it absolutely can be done. I worked for a year and a half helping people in the US do that. And the more I think about it, the more joy that would bring me helping people, in Japan do it. Because I've had those late nights where I've just been wondering, like, pardon my French, where in the hell is my life going? What can I do to change things? And it was really that desperation, that feeling of kind of the weasels closing in, the pressure that pushed me to find something. And I did. And I'm a lot happier for it. I really can't imagine myself at this age, in my early 40s, doing the same effing thing I was doing almost 17 years ago now. It just I couldn't deal with it. So if that's where you're at, if you want to connect with someone who has made that journey and is I'm still very much on it. I'm always growing and learning. Leave a comment, ask a question, and we can take it from there. All right.